Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joanna. I'm the engagement manager at B UK. B UK is the organization behind B Corp certification, and I'm in the community team managing the certified B Corps in the UK. And I'm joined by Geoff. Would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yes, good afternoon or good morning, everyone. I'm Geoff van Sonsbeeck. I'm the co-founder of House of Baukjen, two women's wear brands, and an early B Corp, and we're in the middle of a recertification, and which is why I think B Lab asked me to shed some stories.
Yeah, great, thanks. And we thought we'll start off by kind of sharing a bit of insight into what B Corp certification is. I think a lot of people have heard of it, maybe. Who hasn't heard of it? No one. Amazing. Great.
Are there B Corps here? Any
no
B Corps?
Right, let's change that. But yeah, I think, especially from the point of view of a fashion company, what is B Corp certification and what does it mean for House of Baukjen to be certified?
If I just go a little bit back, maybe, to explain why we did it. So, to me, B Corp was always this kind of very difficult challenge. It's only the gold to the elite companies would do it. But it can't be further from the truth. It's really a very thorough journey to start on that will make you a better business every single day, and that will ingrain very good practices in your business. And we're adamant that you will be better business because of it. If I go a little bit back, we had two brands, we still have two brands, and we always thought we were quite a good company in many ways on ethics, very concerned to do the things right. But about 6 years ago, I learned, together with my wife, a horrible stat, that fashion was actually the second worst sector in the world, top 10% in emissions, and every second a truckload of garments was going to landfill or incineration. And that was really a moment of crisis of conscience, because I didn't want to be part of that sector going forward. And we either could get out, or we could make it our effort to change the sector for good, to demonstrate that it wasn't just possible, but also very profitable. And I think when you look at that challenge, you say, wow, in that case, you can't just tinker a bit with the model you already have. You can only do it if you completely rethink everything you do. And you start unpicking your linear model and start laying them out and rethink what would be making most sense for the business, for the planet, for the people, for the communities around the world. And can you pull that back together in a way that you're actually a better business? And I think the first thing when we said this is what we're going to do, we're basically going to put the business on black. It's like going to the casino and say, it's all in or not. And when we said this is what we're going to do, the next thing we said is we will become a B Corp to guide us through the governance structures of making sure that we stick to the plot and that we do everything as measurable and as solid as possible. And that's where it came from. So 6 years ago, we embarked on the journey, roughly, and today we are in a recertification.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, I always love to hear the motivators or the reasons why companies become B Corps, and I think it makes it really clear that, you said it earlier, it isn't black or white. A lot of people want to become better and use the B impact assessment to do that. So when you decided to become a B Corp, how was the process then like for you? How did you involve the team, and how was the process of actually going through the assessment for your company?
Listen, there's no hiding that the process is complicated, it's thorough, but it's not a one-off process. The whole point for us was to make sure that we embed it right from day one in the whole organization. So it really takes, not just a team or two, it takes a village to deliver B Corp and then to keep it in the business. So for us, it started by rethinking all the processes and then creating the right frameworks around it that you can actually measure it and manage it and improve on it. And I think that's the whole, how do you get the whole team behind a thorough, clear purpose and then say, we're going to measure it through B Corp. That's how we deliver on this journey. And it's a vital thing to realize that, I call it a journey because it really is. A lot of companies, I should really challenge you all to start a journey tomorrow, because it's not so much about hitting the threshold of 80 points and getting the accolade of being a B Corp. It is that every single day you're a better business than the day before. And equally, companies that have become a B Corp, if they stick to the same score at the next recertification, that to me is problematic, because a journey is one of progress, and you should become better and better every day. And I think vitally, I mean, I keep saying it, it's a better business is also a more profitable business. So there is this idea that it actually is only a luxury you can afford on certain circumstances. I really challenge you on it. It's you are a more profitable business if you work better together with your stakeholders towards a collective objective.
Yes, thank you. We actually did we worked on a project with this think tank called Demos, and there's this amazing figure. If every business acted purpose-driven and aligned profits with the planet, there would be, I forgot the exact number, it's around 40 million, a 40 million boost to the GDP of the UK just by doing purpose-driven decisions. So yeah. Maybe for anyone who's not so clear on the B Impact Assessment itself, it's free, first of all, to use, so anyone can go on it. And it's at the moment divided into 5 areas. One is governance, which is what you've covered on. There's the environment, there's customers, workers.
Community.
And community, thank you very much. So yeah, so basically a holistic look on all the stakeholders that are affected by your business. So once you then got B Corp certification, how did that affect your day-to-day operations as well, in how you made decisions or in how your team measured KPIs or anything like that?
Yes, I think that change already happened before we became a B Corp. It happened when we started the journey, because you start indeed measuring, and you also empower your teams to make decisions as long as they are in line with the B Corp principles, and they will drive a better business. So that clarity throughout the organization, across every team, is very powerful. It creates a culture that is what ultimately drives winning teams, winning products, and winning businesses.
Yeah, yes, that's great. Was there anything that surprised you when you went through the process, or anything where you thought you'd be doing really well, but then you had to change anything?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, in fashion, to score an environment is a tricky one. And if you look at your peers in the fashion sector, we will always score low because of our inherent negative footprint, which is one of the things I believe in the new system is being picked up. Because ultimately you want to score on every element compared to your peers, and of course being measured against the planet. So that was a bit of a surprise, and I think also the other surprise, which was a positive surprise, is the power of governance. And I keep circling back to it, because if you are clear what you want and you build your reporting structures around it, then it becomes self-fulfilling, and it drives team to the behavior you're looking for. So you end up scoring on all your other facets almost by proxy of your governance.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, thanks for mentioning the evolution of standards. Maybe just, again, for reference, B Corp certification is changing. So where right now you score across these 5 impact areas we've mentioned, and you can score really high in one area, but then maybe not so high in another, there will be minimum requirements across the board in the future, which will be really interesting. One that potentially could be a challenge for fashion companies, human rights in terms of where you source your materials, and then the environment section in terms of measuring scope 3 and all of those kind of data points.
Yeah, fun challenges.
Yeah, yeah.
But you are right. I mean, the human rights issue is a major one. We're quite active in it, or we try to do our best. There are some horrible stats. I think 1 in 120 women or girls are in a form of modern-day slavery across the world. So it's hard to believe that CEOs of a business can sit there and full-heartedly say, not on my supply chain. You need to really focus a lot on it, on what you can do to stop that. And even now, I cannot guarantee it's not happening, but we do our very best to make sure it's not there.
How do you do that?
Well, I think it starts, part of the principle of B Corp is to work very closely with your suppliers. And in a sector that I find historically had a bit of a veil of secrecy around it, the factories didn't really want to tell which dye houses they use, and which mills, and which suppliers. So it was all very old-fashioned and secretive. If you start working together with them towards that common goal, and you start lifting that veil, you start collaborating. And collaboration, to give you an immediate idea, we're talking about carbon and water, waste, or any chemicals waste. Waste costs money. So if you start collaborating on reducing the footprint, you actually make more profit between the supply chain. And they can see that they are more powerful and a better future than their immediate competitors. So it becomes self-fulfilling also on how supply chains work together. And equally, you just need to instill the importance of these ethics and that you're measuring it. And of course, then, as much as you can, you do the certifications, the audits, constant visits, know your supply chains. We know about, I think, almost 60 or 55% of our tier 4 suppliers, which is basically the farm or the forest. We know where it comes from. And that is a constant struggle to lift that veil, to learn more and more and more. Where is it coming from and what do we know about it? So, but that's the joy too. It is fantastic to, if I look back, how we worked in fashion, it was kind of a faceless supplier who brought you the products. And now we really understand the complexity and how these things work together and how you can improve and how you can innovate and what amazing new fibers and processes are within reach, either because they're developed or we discover that nature already had them and they are cheaper or better and we embed them in the organization. It makes it such a more joyful journey together for all of us.
Yeah, thank you. We actually recently spoke to a B Corp in the hospitality kind of restaurant industry, and they were talking about the difficulties in sourcing from other countries and trying to encourage their suppliers to be better. In that case, it was towards around animal welfare. But yeah, did you find, was there any resistance from any suppliers that you already had when you kind of wanted them to raise the standard, or were they already kind of aligned?
Yeah, but I mean, we do our best to inspire suppliers, full stop, to make the journey. And I have at least 2 B Corps or companies in my supply line that have become B Corp because of us.
Oh, wow.
I even have an investor who, not because of us, but 12 days after the war broke out, he pulled out because he had to focus on Europe. But he himself became a B Corp too, as an institutional. So we're doing a lot of that. But yes, there will be cynical suppliers, and if I can't convince them, if they can't become a volunteer, then I don't want them as a prisoner, I put it simple. So we move on, because in the end, the sector will need to consolidate around new practices. And that means that we will lose suppliers, and we will lose brands, we will lose people. But as a principle, because we have it ingrained in our purpose that we want to change the sector for good, we work actively with our competitors through organizations like the Fashion Pact. We're one of 72 members, I believe, globally, and that pact together is, I think, 38% of the global fashion sector. So we actively engage with them to help them on the journey, or to at least make the switches and the turns that we have seen. But equally with our consumers, we use a lot of what we call edutainment to try to change the behavior and create a movement on the consumers for good. And lastly, regulatory. So as much as we can, we try to influence regulation, because we need the legislation to set the agenda. But equally, it shouldn't deter us, and it's better to be a leader in the pack before legislation arrives.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you've touched a really important point there. I think every B Corp, or every company, once they certify, sign the Declaration of Interdependence. So it's, it's kind of a big ethos of the B Corp movement to be interdependent and to kind of come together and change each sector for good. So thank you for that.
Which also gives opportunities, because the B Corp community will do partnerships between each other. We with the Body Shop or Evolve or other brands, and you just know that the customer base is warm to the concept of B Corp, and if you can help each other, why not?
Exactly, and it's a great segue into the next section. So now that we know what it means to be a B Corp and how to become one, what are the benefits actually? Are there any tangible benefits you've seen since you've certified?
Well, I can't measure how consumers respond to it. I think you have done some studies, so you can see as a cohort that they are better performing. And I think that the customers will be more loyal. They don't necessarily buy more, because we actually ironically say, please buy less, but buy better. But the loyalty will be better. But I do see enormous benefits in my supplier base and my my employees by us being so clear about being a B Corp and so proud of it, and not just an 80-point B Corp, if you like, but a bit further up on the line, so people want to work with us, and they want to work for us. And that is, of course, an enormous benefit in itself. I think with more B Corps arriving, there will be more awareness around B Corps, but equally it may wean off a bit of those benefits. I don't know. We shall see. But that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it because it really was part of what we believed in, and we felt and have seen that it's fantastic for business to be a better business.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that for your customers, it shouldn't mean that they buy more from you. I think changing the fashion industry for good also means innovating, and whether that means like using better materials that last longer, or there's another B Corp that they've recently certified, Sojo. I don't know if you've heard of them. They repair garments. So I think, a lot of it is around changing behaviors as well. I'm glad you mentioned it's not just about selling more, which,
Yeah, and I think, this whole, we're living in this liminal stage now with fashion, and that's good. But there's going to be a lot of innovation, there's going to be a lot of new business models, there's going to be a rethink of global supply lanes, partnerships, working together, circular models, and that's fantastic. That's not for everyone, but I think it is the future. So I think grab it.
Yeah. And I don't know if House of Baukjen itself has any investors. I think you're an investor yourself, so I wonder what's the view of investors in companies with certificate B Corp status?
So we don't have institutional money behind us. We almost had, and clearly are inspired, and that was a large European fund, because they dropped out on the investment, but they did become a B Corp, so I'm very happy with that. No, investors generally will follow the money, and they can see that a B Corp is a better business, and the stats will support that. So it is definitely a benefit to investors. Tomorrow I'm at the London Stock Exchange, and they're looking for B Corps to think about how they can be more present on the public market, and those kind of things are, of course, a very easy, recognizable, well-vetted certification that they can lean into.
Yeah, great. Cool. So if there's any companies here that are thinking of maybe going for B Corp certification or looking at the B Impact assessment, what advice would you give them?
Well, do it. And do it, start immediately. That's a blatantly obvious one. It really starts at the top. So I see things with B Corp going wrong if it is a delegated project to a department, and it's not owned at C-suite, because that's where the problem is. C-suite needs to own the opportunity. And it starts very simple. There's a lot of questions. I never really know how many, because it's like a rabbit war, and if you answer yes, then there's another 10 opening up. But I guess it's around 300 questions or something you need to answer. And I always recommend to my fellow entrepreneurs or C-suite to just start looking at the assessment and take some time together and then just go through it. And you'll be amazed how many questions you already can answer positively, how many you say, oh, that's thought-provoking, I can do this tomorrow, that's a good idea, let's dedicate that too. So to me, it's just start the journey, and don't give up, be courageous. Look at it like a journey. It's not a finish line, it's a journey, and you need to keep going. Yeah.
And speaking of that journey, you mentioned you are in your recertification process.
Yeah.
So companies recertify every 3 years. How did you find that, and what were the improvements you made within
on our side, improvements?
On your side, yeah.
Okay. Well, I had. So, what to say? There is going to be a new system going forward. So the next recertification is going to be completely revamped. On this occasion, because it were similar questions, it was relatively easy. We always have the documentation, and I urge everyone to, if you give an answer, have the documentation ready, because again, I said it before, governance, and you need to be measured, you need to record it, you need to have it. So that's part bread and butter of it. We had the inconvenience that I had to change in my team. So the new team, how brilliant they are, they started from scratch to understand the same documents. And so when you get into the verification process, it is incredibly thorough. Most questions will be asked to be verified, but a lot of questions, particularly if your answers are more progressive, let's put it differently, you have layers of verification. It's, the first verifiable delegated up the line to someone more senior in a faraway country who's more of a specialist, and that's how it keeps going. So you can't really cheat this, you can't wing this. You really need to earn this, and it needs to be authentic. So it's a long process. I think we're now 4 months in the recertification, so there you go. And I also don't know where we are. I mean, it could take another 4 months, but I could get tomorrow my confirmation, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's fun, but it takes some time, yeah.
It is intense, yeah. And it's maybe relevant, like with you, you've had your change in teams, and you've mentioned earlier as well that there are maybe networks or resources available. How did you upskill your team, or what resources or networks did you find available to kind of get your head around?
Yeah, I mean, I know there is a lot of sharing between B Corps, and there are some experts you can tap into, and of course the portal itself. We typically have that skill in-house, so we know the answers and we know where we're pushing and trying to progress. So in this case, it was just a handover. We also have a system of B Corp ambassadors, which means that every department has a few ambassadors who are not so much because they functionally need to be involved in a certain area, but because they have an affinity with a certain area. So they are internally whipping it all together and keeping the spirits high, if you like, on B Corp. So that helps. But otherwise, it's not something they have to reinvent. We have the answer, and if we don't have it, our suppliers will have the answer, and we'll go and find it. Yeah. So it's not so complicated. Yeah,
yeah, you're right. I think it's overwhelming when you look at it, but then, like you say, you find out, actually, we have that policy, or that's something we already do. So, yeah. Cool. And now, looking ahead, how do you see the role of B Corp certification maybe evolving the fashion industry or changing it?
Yeah, that's... well, I'm curious to see how B Corp in the new system will tackle fashion, because, again, it has an inherently complicated ethics and planetary impact. But I think a lot of it is possible. There's also a lot of legislation coming our way across Europe and the UK, and UK less so. I mean, the irony. We took the lead on the fixing fashion, and then we gave the prize to Europe to run with it. But anyway, something will come our way, and I think it's helpful if B Corp embeds the up-and-coming legislation already in the certification or in the test, because then companies can start thinking about it, and we're all aligned behind these requirements, if you like. So I think that's new. I'm not sure that is happening, but I should. Okay, that's good. That's good to know. Thank you for that. But otherwise, no, it is allowing, I think particularly in fashion too, allowing and rewarding companies for innovation. Because a lot of the answers in fashion will have to come through innovation. And for that, you need to take risks. And they are also notoriously hard to prove because they're innovations and you don't have the evidence immediately available. But they are important because they will drive the change that we need. Yeah.
Yeah, you've actually got an impact business model, so there are different questions in the impact assessment. One's how you set up your company, and they're called impact business models, and the other ones are operational. And you got one that's really, really hard to get, and it's the environmentally innovative impact business model. What did that mean in your case?
I still officially don't know that I have it, but thank you. It's part of the recertification. So I guess it came with us by how we worked with our suppliers, quite intense and always on the look on how can we improve things we're doing. And, well, you all know fashion, but the carbon footprint of fashion, about 20% of that is in the dyeing process. Depends a bit on how you count. It's not just carbon, but if you add waters and chemicals, it gets even worse. So it's a massive part of the fashion problem. And we, through our vertical, we found an innovation in Portugal that was completely neglected because the conventional fashion industry didn't want to work with it. But it could be used through the existing infrastructure in the dye houses, and it had a 50% improvement in the carbon footprint of the dye houses. Now, put that at scale, which is what I'm doing, amongst others, at the Fashion Pact and at the UN. But if the whole of the fashion sector would adopt it, the carbon footprint of the whole sector would drop by 6.5%. It's enormous. It's kind of no-brainer. It's not even more expensive. It's like, why we're not doing it? And it's just hitting brick walls in the conventional industry. But we took a big risk on it early on and worked with that innovation and with the vertical to test it and to improve it. And we're now using it across pretty much all of our celluloses. And yes, it has a massive impact on the industry, with a view that it's not for us. It's meant to be used by any other company, and so that's how it's being pushed out now. So we took a lead in being a catalyst, if you like, in bringing a very good innovation to the mass, to the critical mass. Yeah. And I think that's why we're getting points.
I love
but for us, it was natural, and it was interesting, and it was common sense, and it was fun. Yeah.
Great. Cool. Now, before we go into our Q&A, if there are any questions, is there anything else you'd like to share with anyone, about your experience with B Corp certification, or, anything
Oh, it's
like
a lot
that?
of fun, because that's the other bit. It's an interesting crowd of people, and they grow fast, and that's, of course, not the reason to do it. But you really feel a buzz and an alignment with the future. And from our point, I think the world is changing so fast that having that purpose embedded in the organization and structured around it will give you the resilience you need to, and that is so vital in this industry. So I love it, I love it. You should all become a B Corp, I keep saying it. Who is thinking about becoming a B Corp?
Look, a few hands there.
Good, talk to me later.
Great, yes please. But yeah, if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask us, either about the process, anything about House of Baukjen, there's a hand up already. Oh wait, I think there's a microphone coming.
So I was just wondering if you've explored certifications at a product and fiber level to verify that the actual fibers and processing you're using is more environmentally friendly. So I'm thinking about things like the Global Organic Textile Standard, which obviously verifies you're using organic cotton, but also that the processing is environmentally friendly, as well as ticking off like the human rights aspects as well. Totally.
You can't do it without. So we know everything about the fibers, as much as we can at least, and trying to learn even more. It's not always that certifications are the best fibers. I'll give you an idea. We're moving very much to in-conversion cotton now, which is on its way to GOTS. And if we can help those farmers, then that's even more important to the sector, if you like. So sometimes, you've got to think about what's the greater good. And the greater good is that you be that catalyst for the sector. But yes, no, you need to understand the footprints and the ethics of any fiber and any process, and it helps enormously if it's already certified. Yeah. And of course, as recycled as much and as regenerative as possible, so all of that, yeah. Is that the end? 6 minutes, yeah.
I'm just quite curious on, for the B Corp certification, I assume it unlocks this unique community of other companies that you have. In your experience, has that benefited business-wise in terms of collaborations and what you can do with other brands that are B Corp certified, which I assume they have a much higher standard in who they want to actually collaborate with? Yeah.
Yes, it's being encouraged, and I think even if it's not encouraged, you naturally will seek out other B Corps. But that's not always the one we will go with. Sometimes the intent of a company of trying to be better could be more important. A bit like I was saying earlier, to help them on the journey of it. But no, there is a lot of collaborations, a lot of partnerships, and as I think I mentioned earlier, from a marketing point of view, it's very easy to do cross partnerships because you're all in the same family, and at least what you get is something you can stand behind. Yeah.
And I think from the aspect, like from what B Lab offers, we have industry circles where the C-suite of certain industries meet and share best practice. We have like an internal LinkedIn, we call it. It's called the Beehive, where like I log in every day and you see companies asking for policies or for examples on how other companies do certain things, and there's a lot of collaboration happening. And then especially in B Corp month, which is every March, you see lots of product collaborations and kind of the marketing side, like you mentioned. So yeah, I would say globally as well, there is a lot happening in industries and even cross-industry.
And it's picking up momentum because I think the UK is the fastest growing, second largest, but fastest growing B Corp country in the world. And I remember when you hit the 1,000 and now you're through the 2,000 already, it's going very fast. And that is important because if you go, I mean, we're in John Lewis, we're with M&S, but John Lewis is thinking about a B Corp section. Ocado, Waitrose, they have a B Corp aisle for the products. So it becomes a recognizable brand of endorsement, if you like, which is what it is. And listen, I'll be honest, it's not a perfect accreditation. There's a lot written about it, but it's still the best out there, and they're very active in revisiting and sharpening the processes around it. So, I'm a great fan of it.
Are there any other questions? We'll have a couple of minutes left. Yes?
I'm not sure if you answered this question before, but or when you were talking. So from the first point you signed, on online assessments till you actually get the certificate, how long was that process, would you say?
Well, I would say there's two stages. So when we started our own assessment, you can take as long as you like. You can take 10 years for it. Just tinker it to fine. But if you say, all right, I'm now ready to go, and you press that button, it depends a bit on staffing and the complexity. I think the principle is about 2 or 3 months, I think, nowadays, or?
It really is hard. It's hard to say.
But if it gets, in our case, I was explaining the innovation in the dye process. That involves a whole platoon of experts to challenge us on the science. Is it really true? Can you show me the life cycle assessments and all of that? So it takes a lot more time to get past those. But I think it could have happened in 3 months. Let's be careful, and it probably will take about 5 months in our case. Okay. But business continues, so there is it doesn't stop you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, and it's like what you said earlier as well, depending on how many of the policies that are needed you already have, or what you need to implement versus what you just document and find evidence for, that, always depends and makes it longer or shorter. Great. Well, thank you, everyone.
Good, perfect timing.
Thank you, Geoff.
No, Joanna, thank you.
And hopefully we've convinced some people of B Corp certification, or at least of thinking about these principles in their businesses and their purchasing decisions.
But just say one final thing. I mean, honestly, I keep hammering it. It makes you a better business, and it's true, because that purpose will lead to more resilience, and more resilience will lead to more profit. But really, the bit that at the end works, all that purpose makes it much more rewarding, much more fun. And it's what gets people out of bed in the morning. It's you work for something that stands for something. And it really, I cannot see why you wouldn't want to be part of a purpose-led B Corp.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.